And I think we're live. Hey everyone, my name is Lauren Musica. I am the Executive Director of Sidewalk Advocates for Life. I am an attorney and trained sidewalk counselor of 16 and a half years, and it is my greatest joy to support people out on the front lines who are offering those loving, life-affirming alternatives to men and women headed into the local abortion facility. So just real quick, who is Sidewalk Advocates for Life? Sidewalk Advocates for Life is a new international sidewalk advocacy or sidewalk counseling organization that teaches people like you and me how to peacefully and effectively offer, again, those loving, life-affirming alternatives to abortion-bound women and men. We have about 90 locations around the globe, 85 in the United States and 5 international, and it looks like our next one is going to be in Dublin, Ireland. Isn't that awesome? Thumbs up. All right. So tonight we are super excited to join with Students for Life of America for the National Pro-Life Generation Sidewalk Day to give you guys the training and tools to make a life-saving difference this Saturday and really beyond. You know, we've had people who've gone through our training and they've said, wow, Lauren, like this is amazing because even if it's just me, you know, having a cup of coffee with a friend who's in crisis, these tips and strategies are so amazing because I know how to talk to somebody who is facing a big crisis in their lives. And so really, we're going to give you the best of the best people skills tonight. And how much more should we be using those in the pro-life movement to help transform hearts and save lives and end abortion, right? That's what we're here for tonight. You know, keep in mind that sidewalk counseling is such an important and practical way to affirm life in your community. And I want to give you kind of three little tidbits here that really show you that this does make a monumental difference and that this is so worth your time. Okay, so former abortion providers who are now on our side of the fence who are pro-life, and side note, isn't it interesting that mostly they're coming to our side rather than our side going to their side? I think it's because we have logic and science and truth and anyway, so... But, you know, when there was a peaceful, prayerful sidewalk presence in front of their abortion facility, they tell us it was a bad day for business. Former Planned Parenthood director Abby Johnson tells us that, you know, when she was working for Planned Parenthood, the last conference that she went to, Planned Parenthood said that they were regularly documenting up to a 75% cancellation rate when there was a peaceful, prayerful outreach presence on the sidewalk. That's amazing because some days we're going to go out there and we're not going to see something. You know, someone's not going to say, hey, I chose life, or maybe because of their personality or, you know, they just didn't feel like pulling over the car or whatever it may be. But we know that hearts and minds are being changed when people are out on the sidewalk, and Planned Parenthood is seeing it in their facilities, right? And then Abby, who now runs the abortion worker ministry, and then there were none. You can go to abortionworker.com to see that ministry. Over 70% of the workers that are coming to them when they ask, hey, you know, how did you hear about this, right? How did you hear about, and then there were none, and everything that we offer to help workers transition out of the business, over 70% are saying, I got it from somebody out on the sidewalk. So again, this makes a huge difference. And it just goes to show that if we're ready to end abortion, and I truly believe abortion is going to end very soon, someday, right? If we're going to end abortion through the power of love, that being there is more than half the battle. So the National Pro-Life Generation Sidewalk Day is going to give you this monumental opportunity to come together with other students and community members across the nation to be a voice for women and children. Now, just a reminder to be sure to check out www.sidewalkday.org. Again, that's sidewalkday.org for more information about this life-saving event. There you can find details about the event and find an event location nearest you, right? Because you want to team up with other students and other community members. All right, awesome. Introduction done. So before we get to the actual training part, just a few instructions that will be really helpful as we train tonight. Number one, the most popular question that we get is, what is your approach? Throughout the training, you're really going to get a sense of that, right? How we're peaceful, prayerful, and law-abiding, that we're woman-oriented, and we're so loving. But in short, the method we employ is one we've nicknamed the heart method, that our prerogative is to get at that woman's heart, you know, find out what brought her to the abortion or abortion referral facility and fill those needs with life-affirming resources at the local pregnancy resource center or other community health centers in our area. Knowing that when we do that, that quite often the baby will come right along with her, because we as women, we were made to give life. And I don't even mean just physically, but spiritually. Like, I mean, let's be honest, we organize the world and we give life, right? That's what we do, right? And so, when we come alongside a woman and whatever crisis she's facing in her life, when we fill those needs, she instinctively becomes more maternal because it's how she's created. And so then she's able to more aptly consider the life of this child. So we know that we can't save children without helping their mothers. Thus, we take a very loving, peaceful, woman-oriented approach to sidewalk counseling, which again, you're going to see more throughout the training. And we use this because we found this to be very effective, frankly. Since our organization started 2 years ago, and this is not including the other amazing program advisors we work with, our friends in 40 Days for Life, in just 2 years, we've seen almost 1,350 babies saved. And those are just the ones we know about. So 1 to 2 children being saved each and every day on average. Almost 350 hopefuls. Those are folks that took information and, left to think about it. That, we tried to do everything we could to help them to make a decision for life. But, they were armed with information on the local pregnancy resource center, life affirming alternatives. And many times we can move hopefuls to the save column, So 150 turnaways. Those are folks who we didn't know whether they were pregnant or not, but they took us up on an offer of a free pregnancy test and free sonogram, so then they left the abortion facility. So 150 of those, and then 30 workers who have left the business with the help of a sidewalk advocate, and we referred them to, again, abortionworker.com, Abby Johnson's ministry, and then we've seen 2 facility closures. Now, I share this because this isn't about numbers at the end of the day, right? We share this because it shows that peaceful sidewalk counseling gets results, to be an encouragement to the pro-life community. So many women tell us, I was praying for a sign and you were my sign, or thank you for being here today. I didn't know that there was so much help available. It's amazing. Just a little bit goes a long way. So, keep in mind, you may go out this Saturday and you may not see a whole lot. You may see miracles. What we know is that the statistics are showing us that whether you see it in front of your face or not, that hearts are being moved and lives are being changed. And just remember that you're stirring hearts and minds and you're creating the constructive tension for abortion to end in your community. And if nothing else, that woman in crisis will remember you. She will remember that you were there that day, and you have no idea how that will change her life later. Okay, couple other practical things. Number 2 instruction is you'll probably want to grab a pad and, pad of paper and a pen, right? Don't feel like you have to write down everything that I'm saying. Write down a word or a phrase that will help you to remember that concept. And I'll also give you clues throughout the presentation about what's really important to write down or whatnot, right? Okay, number 3. Remember that our training is actually scaled for a national and international scale. So the reason I bring that up is because we may give you a piece of advice tonight where in your community that wouldn't be law abiding. So for example, when we go over approaching cars that are headed into the abortion facility, if the driveway is on abortion center property, well, we don't want you to go on the driveway and stop a car, right? We want to be peaceful, prayerful, and law-abiding. So we say, insofar as you can use this advice and be peaceful, prayerful, and law-abiding, use the advice, okay? So just keep that in mind, all right? And number 4, many of you are going to locations where there is an existing sidewalk counseling program. So for example, if you go to Aurora, Illinois, or Chicago area abortion facilities, you may encounter Pro-Life Action League. If you go to Twin Cities, Minnesota, you may encounter Pro-Life Action Ministries, who covers those abortion facilities well. I know in Sidewalk Advocates for Life, if you go to sidewalkadvocates.org and click the location button, you'll see a map of where all of our locations are. So it may be a good idea to head out there a little early, shake some hands. And, the other great thing is that as you're seeking to be law abiding and you're trying to figure out, hey, what is abortion center property? And then, what is public property where I can stand? A lot of those folks in the community already know that great information. And so you're going to want to, hook up with them, partner with them, and see how you can be a blessing that day. It may be that you guys take turns. It may be that you start off in prayer or, so figure out how you can be the greatest blessing that day. Hey, there may even be an entrance that's not being covered, So get the lay of the land, figure that out, and see how you can team up with those in your local community. All right, and then after this training, if you have any questions, of course, Students for Life of America is here for you, and we are too. You can drop us a line at info@sidewalkadvocates.org. Again, that's info@sidewalkadvocates.org. And then the 6th thing that I want you to keep in mind, last instruction, is that Our vision as a pro-life movement is that, and our vision in Sidewalk Advocates for Life is that there will be no uncovered abortion facility in the United States. I mean, if this is so effective, if Abby Johnson is telling us that Planned Parenthood is regularly documenting up to a 75% cancellation rate when there's a peaceful, prayerful sidewalk counseling presence out on the sidewalk, I mean, my goodness, we need to think about going out maybe somewhat regularly. So maybe this is a launching pad for your student group to go out, once a month or once a week or, whatever works for you. So if we can help you brainstorm that, if your regional coordinator can help you brainstorm that, be thinking about that, right? Because that's a good thing to do. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to the training here and we're going to get started. So, all right. Here's what I want to start off with. This is the spirit of our program. And whether you are Christian or not, or, person of faith or person of just conscience, I think that you'll appreciate the spirit of these verses. This is what we've chosen to express the heart of sidewalk counseling. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and surrender my body to the flames, but have not love, I gain nothing. And this is the point. You can have the most perfect thing to say. You can give that woman who's headed into your local abortion facility the most compelling life before birth argument. You can give her every reason that she shouldn't have an abortion. But if she feels like we don't love her, if she feels like we're judging her or taking her moral inventory, she will shut down on us and hear nothing that we have to say. We may lose that conversation. On the other hand, if we say the most simple things with great love, we will see mountains move by God's grace. And so let me share with you a quick story, something that was a life-changing moment for me out on the sidewalk. I remember it was the summer of 2006. It was the summer before I went to law school, and I was a full-time sidewalk counselor here with a group in Dallas. And I remember being in front of this one facility in an alleyway where a young mother and her mom, were driving through the alleyway. And I did the universal roll down your window sign, and I leaned in and I said, "Hi, my name is Lauren. I want to let you know that we love you. We've been praying for you, and we've got real help for you today. I don't know what's going on with you guys. I don't know what brings you here today, but there's hope, and there's so much help available." And we started to talk. And what I found out was that young woman was a junior in high school, that they had nothing. Her family, they were just surviving. She was scared to have her baby. And again, we know that abortion is never the answer, but people are duped into thinking that this is going to solve their problems. The abortion industry tells that woman that for $500, this is going to take care of her biggest problem, and somehow her life is magically going to go back to normal. And then they send her out the door, and she's got to live with the consequences of this. And we started talking about that. And she was saying to me, "I've had friends who have had abortions," and she said to me, "All of them regret it." And I said, "Wow, see, I'm just walking alongside her, just affirming everything I'm hearing." And I said, "Honey, do you have a place to live?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, do you have a car?" And she said, "No." And I said, "But Mom does, right?" And she said, "Yes." Slowly she began to put the pieces together. And at one point I looked at her and I said, "Well, honey, you have more things than a lot of women who decide to have their babies." And she just needed someone to tell her that this was possible. I mean, think about this. We in the pro-life movement, we tell women, you can do this. You don't have to have abortion to solve your problems. There's all of this help. There's all of these resources, that we're a community of support. And it's the abortion industry that's telling women, you can't do this, that you can't survive without abortion, that you can't go to school without abortion. I mean, what kind of message is that? Telling women you can't do it. And instead we're saying you can do this and you can do it all, right? And those of you who are on the front lines, all of you millennials, now in school and everything like that, I mean, you guys know the resources that you have on campus. You're making this possible for pregnant and parenting students, right? And so this young woman that day, she just needed to hear, you can do this and we're going to walk with you and it's going to be okay. And so at one point, she opens the car door. I'm not kidding. She opened the car door. She jumps out of the car, throws her arms around my neck and says, okay, let's go get a sonogram. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, it worked, right? I mean, it's like middle school volleyball where you're like, yeah, put me in, coach, put me in. And then the ball's coming towards you and you're like, oh my gosh, I got to do something, right? It was amazing. It was one of the most amazing moments of my life. And I walked her upstairs to the Pregnancy Resource Center and she saw the sonogram and said that sealed the deal. She was like, man, I saw that sonogram and I realized there's a life inside of me, right? And so you and I, just by being out there, just by loving people, just by letting them know the help that's available, being familiar with community resources, not telling women they don't need scandal-ridden Planned Parenthood. Let's be honest, right? That can make a huge life-saving difference. And many times that's all that's needed to help somebody to make a decision for life. So, all right, here we go. Mission and philosophy. So I'm going to give you some foundational things before we actually get to our 5-point method for reaching a woman in crisis. Okay, so here in a little bit, we're going to get to that. We're going to walk you step by step by step how to have that conversation with a woman or family headed into the local abortion facility. So what is sidewalk counseling? Sidewalk counseling is crisis intervention at the abortion facility to encourage a woman to choose life, to empower her to leave the abortion facility, and to reach out to everyone to bring about a conversion of heart from a culture of death to a culture of life. And here's why we define our terms, because we're intervening at a critical moment in somebody's life, right? We don't know their story, but we're coming in as a beacon of hope, letting them know, hey, there's these other choices available, right? And the idea here is that we never want to end a conversation without an invitation to our local pregnancy center, because that's where they can do ongoing crisis management. Because there's a risk that as we intervene in that moment, and even with, that young mother, that story that I just told where she jumped out of the car and, it was a blatant display of, yes, I'm choosing life, right? I still needed to get her to the pregnancy center so that they could continue. And yes, I was there for her too. I met her little girl years later, little Jayla, right? But she needed to be surrounded with the resources that the Pregnancy Resource Center had. We needed to seal the deal, right? Because the risk is that young woman will go home back into all of the pressures that brought her there in the first place. And we want to make sure that doesn't happen, that she doesn't go home and, grandpa's in her ear, right? Or father's in her ear and saying, you have to go back, you have to have this abortion. And so it's so important that we get her into relationship with a great local pregnancy resource center. So get to know your pregnancy resource centers. We are a team out on the sidewalk. So keep that in mind. Okay, now remember, there is no perfect sidewalk counselor. The good Lord is going to use your unique gifts and talents, right? So I tell people, whether you're young or old, man or woman, introverted or extroverted, you can make a huge difference for life. I have so many people that say to me, Lauren, I could never be like you. I'm not a super extrovert. I can't just walk up to somebody and start a conversation. But you'd be surprised. You quieter types, you introverted types, you do maybe a little bit better job of listening. As an extrovert and as a talker, I'm always thinking about the next thing I'm going to say, right? And I have to constantly pull myself back and listen and empathize with that woman and her situation and then respond from there. So we all have pitfalls, we all have weaknesses, and it's good to be aware of those. But, sometimes we think that the perfect sidewalk counselor has to be a woman, has to be college age, and that's just not true. In my 16 plus years of sidewalk counseling, I've seen people flock to the grandmother, to the young man who's out on the sidewalk that can stand for the dignity of that woman and that child. So you can make a huge difference. And one thing that we have to get over is that people are going to refuse to hear our message. We're going to be persecuted, but we'll also change hearts and minds with God's grace. And so I thought, well, famous sidewalk counseling priest Monsignor Riley from New York, if they're going to blow past him, if they're going to ignore him, they're going to ignore Lauren Musica. And I've got to get over that, right? Because if I get discouraged, I never know if the next person I encounter is going to say yes to life. And so we've got to be full of hope, knowing that we're making a difference out there. And at the very least, we're stirring hearts and minds. Now, remember, it doesn't depend on us. It depends on God and those who must respond, right? People make choices. And so I've told people, hey, look, you could throw the proverbial sidewalk counseling manual at them and they may still choose to have an abortion. And that's sad, right? People make choices. But again, you never know how this will be a huge point of change in the future. So keep that in mind. All right. 2 main goals that you have when you head out to the sidewalk. Number 1, we're looking to solve the problem that brought her to the abortion facility. So there's a reason or reasons that brought her there. And the idea is if we can fill that need or needs, then her instinct is to become more maternal and consider the life of her child. So for example, if a woman says, well, mom and dad kicked me out of the house, I have nowhere to go. As soon as they found out I was pregnant, I was gone, right? Well, we can say, well, sweetie, we have a wonderful maternity home in town. If we go next door to the pregnancy center, we can tell you all about it. We can make sure that you do have a place to go tonight. We can make sure, that you do have food, that you have exactly what you need to have your baby, right? So we're thinking along those lines. And then number 2, we're going to direct all business away from the abortion facility. So some folks, some of you may be going out to Planned Parenthood facilities where they provide so-called other services. So for example, it may be that you're headed out to a facility that does well woman exams. Well woman exam, that's not a morally problematic service, right? We want women to get their well woman exams, but where's their money going? And quite often, Planned Parenthood isn't the cheapest option in town. My friend, former Planned Parenthood manager Ramona Trevino, said Planned Parenthood was the 3rd cheapest in town, that there was actually a physician in town that offered them cheaper, and then the community health center down the street, offered them cheaper. I mean, people don't need scandal-ridden Planned Parenthood. Federally qualified health centers outnumber Planned Parenthood facilities 20-1. I mean, this is the largest abortion provider in the United States. 1 in 3 abortions in the United States are done in a Planned Parenthood. Up to 55% of all Planned Parenthood income comes from abortion. Okay, so if we're going to end abortion, then those other services that may be not morally problematic, we need to refer people elsewhere. Let's make a big resource sheet, maybe in hot pink or a woman-oriented color, and think for every service that Planned Parenthood offers, and you can go on their website and look at what they offer. You can have a friend make a friendly phone call in and say, hey, what do you guys offer, right? You can go ahead and give them an alternative to that. And you can put the address and the hours and the phone number and make it easy. And then when you talk to a client and say, hey, mind if I ask what you're coming in for today so I can point you to, the best resource in town? You can circle it for that woman, hand her the sheet, and she's well on her way somewhere else. Even if she goes in that day for that appointment, she may seriously consider going somewhere else, especially if it's no or low cost. Okay, so we're going to keep that in mind. Number 1, solve the problem that brought her to the abortion facility. And number 2, direct all business away from the abortion facility. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of an interactive exercise. So you guys can be thinking about this, or you can go ahead and maybe type a response in the bottom there. I'm going to go ahead and get some notes out. But we're going to try to really understand better the heart of a woman in crisis who's headed into our local abortion facility. Okay, so this exercise that we're getting ready to do is actually credited to a famous sidewalk counselor named Karen Black Mercer, amazing woman from Georgia who has witnessed thousands of saves, right? And she teaches people to think more woman-oriented because that's our audience, that a lot of people go out there and they're thinking baby, baby, baby. And yes, we want to save the baby. But again, the idea is we can't save children without helping their mothers. She's the one making the decision. So if we don't reach her heart, then Roe v. Wade doesn't end in that moment, then abortion doesn't end in that moment. So let's keep that in mind, okay? So here we go. We're going to talk about abortion from the pro-life perspective. If you're at a keyboard and you want to jot down a few words, or you can just be thinking about this. Abortion from the pro-life perspective. What do we think of when we normally think of abortion, or what have we heard in the movement? So words that I've heard when I've done this exercise have been murder, right? Taking a life, baby, injustice, Planned Parenthood. I mean, really, if Planned Parenthood is the largest abortion provider in the United States, then yeah, Planned Parenthood equals abortion. Let's be honest, right? Okay, now the abortion-minded woman from the pro-life perspective. How do we commonly think of her? And maybe, some things come to mind that we would never think, but we've heard other people think. So, for example, selfish. Sometimes people are tempted to think she's selfish. But maybe more rightly so, we acknowledge that she's fallen on hard times. We might be tempted to think irresponsible. How could somebody do this when there's so much help available? I even had one woman in a session say, I don't believe this, but I once heard someone say non-Christian, that if she really were a Christian, she wouldn't be headed into the abortion facility. And I think it's important for us to get all of these things out, because even if they're not right, even if we don't want these things crossing our minds, I think it's good to be aware sometimes of the stereotypes that we fall into, right? Now let's transition. You now work for Planned Parenthood. You're a vehement NARAL supporter, or you support the Center for Reproductive Choice, okay? So you are now a pro-abortion advocate. Okay, so we're thinking about abortion from the pro-choice perspective. What are words or phrases that come to mind? I've heard in this exercise, my choice, my body, my right, freedom, justice, equality, women's rights, right? And it's funny, as I say this, I'm not getting any thumbs up or hearts in that regard, right? That's what we hear. And then the pro-choice perspective, as far as the abortion-minded woman, how do we commonly think of her? Or how do they commonly think of her? Planned Parenthood advocates, we hear responsible, exercising her right, empowered. So what I want you to hear in this exercise is that there's this huge gap, right? And on one side, we've got murder, taking a life, baby, selfish, irresponsible, fallen on hard times. And over here, we've got my choice, my body, freedom, equality, responsible. I mean, the direct opposite of what we heard earlier, right? Empowered, okay? So in this gap, what I want y'all to think about is that in the 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 2 minutes, if it's a luxury out on the sidewalk. I mean, you get maybe, if you're lucky, 30 seconds at a driveway with somebody. The temptation of the pro-life movement is to say, come over to my worldview. But what we're going to do is we're going to use the best of the best people skills, and instead we're going to meet her where she's at. And this is, even a Christian concept that, God met us where we were at and our great need. How much more should we be that for somebody else? And so we're going to not demand that she come over to our worldview in 30 seconds. We're going to go to hers. And we're not going to justify abortion, but we're going to relate to her in language that she can understand. So we're going to start with her. And we're going to say, we love you. We care about you. We've got real help for you today. We want to help you to make a choice that you can live with, right? So we're starting with her. We're not quite getting to baby yet, right? Because if you study the psychology of a woman in crisis, she's pushing baby to the recesses of her mind. She's in self-preservation mode, and she's thinking, if I don't get out of this, then I'm going to get kicked out of the house. I don't know how to put food on the table. I don't know where I'm going to live, right? And so, again, abortion's never a good decision for any of those situations, but we want to make sure that we empathize with what she's dealing with, because she's been lied to by the abortion industry. Hey, $500. Nobody has to know about this. Take care of your biggest problem. Your life will magically go back to normal. And the way to think about this, so Karen Black Mercer, when she does this exercise, talks about, we as pro-lifers, we put things in the right order, right? We put God first. A mother puts her child before herself. So it's almost like God, baby, mom. But a woman in self-preservation mode, a woman in crisis, has it inverted, and she's thinking more like mom, baby, God. So we are going to match how she's thinking so that she understands what we're saying, and we establish a rapport with her first, that we show her we're that safe place for her, that we really have resources and we really can help her. So we'll start with mom, and then we're going to transition at some point and say, honey, how far along are you? Oh, you're 8 weeks. Did you know your little one is doing backflips in your womb and is sucking its thumb and, has a heartbeat, had a heartbeat at 3 weeks, just 21 days after conception, right? And then maybe if we have time, we can bring up an idea about faith. Do you have a faith? Do you pray? And then reinforcing anything good that we hear. Now, quite often, I've had the experience of, I just offer her resources. I get to the mom part and she says, okay, let's go to the pregnancy center. I want to do that instead. And sometimes that's all we need. So again, she's the one making the decision. She doesn't have the moral right to do what she's doing, but unfortunately she has the so-called legal right. And so if we don't reach her, if we don't use language that she can understand, if we don't paint ourselves as that safe place for her, she will hear nothing that we have to say. So remember, you're not counseling the baby, you're counseling the mother. Love them both. Love the mother, meet her need for love and support, and ironically, you'll save the child in the process. So again, great thing to keep in mind. All right. Now, materials. Let's talk about what's important to have with you when you go out to the sidewalk. So, literature, your greatest ally. This can speak for you when you can no longer speak to that client. I had a situation one morning where sidewalk counseling in an alleyway and this truck goes by, right? And they were kind of looking at me, sizing me up, saying, hey, do I want to talk to this girl or not? Well, I saw the man that was driving put his arm out and he reached out for my literature. So I handed him my literature that morning and he took it and he went into the abortion center parking lot. And I could see that he was reading it. You know, he didn't want to talk, but he was willing to take my literature and sit in the parking lot and read it. And after just a couple minutes of reading it, just big tears started to stream down his face. And I was trying to figure out who is the woman in crisis. This young woman sat up in the back, right? And they began talking in the car. And at one point, this man rolls down his window and he goes, come here. And I said, I'm so sorry. I can't cross the line, but you can come to us. So they got out of the car, they came and talked to us, and they made a decision for life that day. And it started with powerful literature, right? So again, greatest ally, because maybe they're not ready to talk to you, but they might be willing to take your literature, okay? So what you need to have a plethora of that day is information on your local pregnancy resource center. So you guys get together in your student group and at the very least make sure that you have a pamphlet for a woman who is thinking about abortion. And I love this one right here from Prolife Action Ministries in Twin Cities, Minnesota. You can go on their website, right? Google Prolife Action Ministries. This is my favorite pamphlet. It is colorful, it's concise, it's woman-oriented. It tells where she can go for help, okay? Again, we're not talking about baby quite yet, right? We're still talking about mom. But the great thing is on the inside, it talks about how abortion may affect her. It's got fetal development facts, right? Stories of people who made a decision for life. And then on the back, it reminds her to look at her sonogram and that she can leave the abortion facility anytime she wants, right? I mean, here's the irony. If folks are pro-choice, what's the problem with her making a choice to read this and consider this and all of the services, right? So again, I love pamphlets like this. So find something that works and talk to your local pregnancy resource center before you go out that day. They may have literature for you, or you guys may have to make up something yourself, but keep those kind of principles in mind. The other thing, as we talked about earlier, a resource sheet, you know, information on local pro-life OB-GYNs, or make a list of community health centers, federally qualified health centers and what they provide. Again, they outnumber Planned Parenthood's 20-1, and they're not scandal-ridden like Planned Parenthood is, okay? So a lot of times they're seeing women on a sliding fee scale, sometimes for free or at least a very reduced rate, and this is why it's so appealing to women. So again, whatever they're going in for, you know, make a list of all of that in your community and then just hand it to them, circle it for them, make it easy for them to go to. And then depending on need, you know, you may have somebody who's going in for, let's see here, we've got the morning after pill, or Ella, which has the potential to throw out a newly conceived life, right? So here's some cool pamphlets on that from Heritage House. Again, if you don't have literature on you that day, you can talk about, you know, we want to use medical language with things like these and tell women, hey, you know, this actually has the potential to cause an early abortion and we want you to be aware of that. Let's get you over to the Pregnancy Resource Center where we can get you, you know, some real help, okay? Let's see, we may be dealing with a young woman who's going in for birth control of some sort. Now, keep in mind that all hormonal contraceptives have the potential to throw out a newly conceived life. They have the potential to act as abortifacients. This is just science, right? And so sometimes we can pass out information about that as well. And yes, copper IUD does act as, you know, like Plan B or Ella, right? So again, being aware of these things, being able to give people literature and speak to them intelligently. And again, if you feel like you can't remember everything about a certain device or drug, then you can hand people information on that. And then depending on need, we can talk to people about sexual integrity. You know, a young unmarried woman going into Planned Parenthood, you know, I love to share that, hey, you know, I mean, let's be honest, like the 100% way to prevent pregnancy, to not worry about STDs, to not worry about being used and using other people is to wait until marriage, okay? I did that. I waited until I was 28 years old, until I got married, and I didn't explode. And actually, my man treated me with such respect. And so that's how I sell it out on the sidewalk. Like, you don't have to worry about coming to an abortion facility or coming to places like this, right? Let's sell this for the amazing option that it is, because I did it. A bunch of my friends did it. It works, okay? okay? And then after abortion, that we're, the first sign of God's mercy for people who unfortunately may have made that decision, that if we're pro-life, then we're going to be there afterwards too, okay? So a God-centered post-abortive healing program or, pregnancy resource centers have these as well. So again, depending on the need, think ahead of time, if a client tells me I'm going in for this, what's something I can hand them, or at least how can I speak to that with science behind me, with logic behind me, and with a lot of love and respect. So again, we can divert all business away from the abortion facility. Okay, a couple of other things that may be good to have. Fetal development model. Look at this little guy, okay? 10-week-old fetal model. Isn't he cute? Okay. So I'll give you a quick story about this. I remember one morning I was sidewalk counseling at the Dallas late-term abortion facility, and these two women were going into the abortion facility, and I reached out and, told them about all of the help available, and they decided to continue the conversation across the street with us. And as I was talking to them, my partner walked up and she had a fetal development model in her hand, and she walked up to this young woman and she said, how far along are you? And the young woman said, well, I'm 13 weeks. And she pulled out this fetal model and she put it down in her hands and she said, your baby is bigger than that, and just walked away. And then later when I talked to these young women on the phone, I said, again, to seal the deal, how are you guys doing? Again, reinforcing that decision for life. This young woman said to me, Lauren, when Miss Joanne put that baby down in my hands, I had no idea my baby looked like that. When I was in the abortion facility today, they turned the screen away from me. They wouldn't let me see the sonogram. They were talking about getting the size of the baby's head so that they knew what kind of abortion to do. I'm not kidding. This woman said this to me. She said it was so chilling. The other woman was telling me that they were walking through the hallways on the phone, on these phones. If you're 13 weeks, it's this price. If you're 14 weeks, it's this price. My goodness. I mean, the abortion center is not going to paint a picture of life for them. Why? Because they see dollar signs. And so how much more can we really paint a picture of life for them by giving them these fetal models or making these available, showing them what their little one looks like at this stage and what they're doing at that stage. Now, other good things to have on you, you might want to have information on the public right-of-way, a pen and paper. So again, one thing that I love to do on, again, our literature is put my name and phone number on the front. Good thing to do. You might want to have your cell phone in case there's something that you need a report that goes on out there. You want a prayer partner or a buddy, again, an eyewitness in case something happens. You want to dress comfortably for the weather. If you're in Texas, I recommend sunscreen. If you're way up in Minnesota, I recommend layers, right? You want to be comfortable so that you are at your best for these women who are going in. And then you want to have maybe something to organize your literature. You don't want to be fumbling. You don't want to be disorganized where you're like, ooh, where did my crisis pregnancy center literature go, right? So I love this guy, right? This is kind of like a coupon book type thing, okay? Different sizes. I make sure to sort my literature ahead of time so I know basically, where to pull out my bag of tricks, okay? So you want to stay organized out there, pretty self-explanatory. And then some of you may want to keep a clinic log or a street sheet. You may want to just keep track of how many clients that you reached out to that day. We don't want to leave any sensitive information on there. We don't want to take down any sensitive information, but sometimes it's good to go ahead and, be aware of how much traffic your local abortion facility is seeing and how much literature you got into people's hands. Now, here's a couple of tidbits before you go. So again, we're getting ready to talk about the 5-point method for reaching out to a woman in crisis. But again, these are important things for you to know. Number one is to pray or be, in a moment of silence and solidarity before you go. And again, whether you're Christian or not, I think you can appreciate the spirit behind these verses. Do not worry about how you are to speak or what you are to say. You will be given at that moment what you are to say. For it will not be you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. So those of you who are people of faith, really connecting to that powerhouse of faith that, sometimes when you feel like, oh gosh, I know I have these guideposts, but I can't think of the next thing to say, just stop and just internally say a little prayer, and no doubt the Holy Spirit will be there for you. Just in a very general sense, the idea that no conversation will be the same, that really what you need to draw upon is that this idea of love, that we're there to help people, that we're there to make them aware of other choices and other resources in their community. And so really it just comes down to that. When you get stuck, just remember you're called to love people and help them and let them know what's available. Okay, educate yourself, Prolife 101. Okay. So conception. Well, let me back up for a second before we get to conception, right? We need to be aware of life before birth facts so that when the conversation turns to this part, when we move from mom to baby, that we know how to paint a picture of life in a womb, that we can use scientific facts, irrefutable facts that will help speak life into that situation, so to speak. So conception, we know that a new human life is formed, that embryo has separate DNA from its mother, and that this life will never be repeated in history. You are unique. You are unique. And so, sometimes these simple reminders to women are very precious and very helpful. 3 weeks, just 21 days after conception, the heart starts to beat. Isn't that amazing? And think about it this way. If, you see somebody lying on the side of the road, if you're driving down the road, you see somebody lying on the side of the road, you pull over and you listen for a heartbeat, that this is a sign of life. So why wouldn't this be a sign of life in the womb, right? So at 3 weeks, just 21 days after conception, the heart is beating. I mean, one morning I was sidewalk counseling talking to a young woman, and sometimes what clients do is they kind of lowball how far along they are because they think, oh, maybe if I say I'm not that far along, then, really they'll tell me it's okay or something. So this young woman said to me, well, I'm just 3 weeks, and she's starting to cry already, as I tell her I love her and I want to help her. And I said, well, sweetie, the heart has already started to beat. Your baby's heart has already started to beat, just acknowledging that. At 6 weeks, brain waves are detected. At 8 weeks, all organs and extremities are present. By 9 weeks, babies are sucking their thumb in the womb. They just need more time to be developed, right? 12 weeks, babies are sleeping and exercising their muscles, and all organs are functioning by 12 weeks. And at 16 weeks, the baby occupies all the room in his or her mother's uterus. So this is why I love this. It's probably weird to walk up to somebody and be like, you're 16 weeks? Cool. Like, the baby occupies all the room in your uterus. How awesome is that? Okay, here's why this is important, because what you can do is you can actually, women, you can take the width of your womb here and hold it up and say, your baby's this big right now. So this is why I love this particular point in human development. And then by the 3rd trimester, the baby is just gaining weight. Babies have survived outside the womb as early as 22 weeks. And I know I used to sidewalk counsel in front of an abortion facility that would do abortions through 24 weeks of pregnancy for any reason. And we know any reason's bad, but it's unbelievable to me that even these babies who are viable outside their mother's wombs are being aborted. When I have family members who've waited in line to adopt a child. And so, yes. So let's keep these in mind. So when the conversation turns to the baby, we're well aware of them. Now, educate yourself. You need to know about the abortion procedure, because there are a couple times here where you can actually still save a life in the middle of an abortion procedure. So again, let's be aware of the morning after pill, otherwise known as Plan B, or the week after pill, which is Ella, keeping in mind that these may abort a newly conceived life. And here's why that is true, okay? Because the medical industry loves to they don't even really define life, but they define pregnancy at implantation. Well, that's just location. We know that life begins at conception, that is when a new human life starts, that we were all embryos, we were all fetuses, that was just a stage in our development, right? And so the abortion industry is saying, well, this isn't an abortion, or this may not cause an abortion. This is just another form of birth control. But we know that this has the mechanism to throw out a newly conceived human life. So we need to use medical language that women can understand and make them aware of this, and letting them know we can get them next door to the Pregnancy Resource Center to do a pregnancy test to follow up with them eventually, and that we will be there for them. Okay, 1st trimester, there's 2 options. You have the option of a surgical abortion or a medical or chemical abortion, otherwise known as RU486, right? Surgical. Okay, that is vacuum aspiration used sometimes with a DNC or a DNC, right? So this is where they insert a long, narrow tube called a cannula into the woman. They force open the cervix and they use a vacuum that is 27 times more powerful than a standard household vacuum cleaner. Pretty sad that we are doing this to women, right? The medical chemical abortion, if you've ever read former Planned Parenthood director Abby Johnson's book, she, has a testimony about her two abortions. She had both a surgical and a chemical. And man, the chemical abortion especially was just so horrific for her. She describes in great detail what she went through, how painful it was for her as a woman. I mean, it wasn't woman oriented to have that done to her body, but there's two medications in this. The first one, Mifeprex, blocks progesterone, which is what feeds the baby. And then the second one, misoprostol or Cytotec, is what empties the uterus. Now, here's why we want you to know about this 2-pill regimen. If the woman has taken the first pill, there is a chance to get her on progesterone shots or progesterone regimen and reverse this. So I want you all, if you write down nothing else tonight, write down abortionpillreversal.com. So if you talk to a woman at an abortion facility who's taken the first pill, let her know that we have a chance to still reverse this. So abortionpillreversal.com, okay? Second trimester abortion, usually a 2-day procedure. So first what they're doing is they're inserting laminaria, which dilates, forces open the cervix. We even had a late-term abortionist here in Dallas that put too much laminaria in women. They were in pain. The emergency room couldn't even believe that they had put that much laminaria in. I mean, it's just unbelievable, right? So here's why this is important, okay? If a woman has had laminaria inserted, again, because they got to dilate the cervix big, because that baby is bigger now, and then they're going to go in and do a D&E procedure, right? Dilation and extraction, where they're pulling the baby out in pieces. I mean, again, unbelievable that this is legal in our great country. So we can get her to the emergency room. We can get her to a Prolife OB-GYN where hopefully that laminaria can be removed and that child can still be saved. So again, if she's doing a second or third trimester abortion, 1, 2, 3 days of laminaria, we can hopefully get that removed and still save that life. Now in the third trimester, okay, what they do is they put in laminaria, they inject the baby's heart with a solution called dioxin, which almost has like a cardiac arrest type reaction, and then they deliver the baby stillborn. Unbelievable. They do this at late-term abortion facilities, 3 or 4 still in the United States. They kill the baby internally so that they legally get around, trying to have that baby delivered alive. And of course, we have testimonies from former abortion providers that say that they witnessed many babies born alive in their facilities. So it's very sad to talk about these things, but we need to be aware of them because we as Sidewalk counselors can get women to the right place and still help save lives. All right, some lighter stuff. Let's cultivate virtues of an effective counselor. We want to represent to that woman out on the sidewalk really in the way that we can help her. So we want to be loving. We want to be peaceful and calm. We want to be unconditionally accepting. I joke that you're going to encounter people out on the sidewalk that your mom told you to stay away from. Or sometimes you'll see people walking down the sidewalk and you'll think, oh gosh, they'll never change their minds. Sometimes we judge a book by its cover. Well, I'll tell you what, sometimes those were my easiest turnaways, right? We want to be humble, sincere, and obedient. Remember that we are imperfect people reaching out to other imperfect people. So keep that in mind. We need to understand why most women choose abortion, because when we get to the part here, and again, we're going to go over that 5-point method for reaching a woman in crisis, and we're going to talk about how you aptly solve the problem to really help her. Number one, thing that brings a woman to the abortion facility usually is finances. So, again, thinking about the Pregnancy Resource Center and everything that they offer, forming a relationship with them, being that sales team for life out on the sidewalk, selling those amazing services at our local PRC. So again, finances, keeping that in mind. Number 2, interference with school, work, or career. A lot of you are, on college campuses that have so many options. I mean, props to you guys for pregnant and parenting students. And so making women aware of these incredible resources where women can still continue with their education and have their babies. Amazing. So we need to be aware of those. Family problems, sometimes filling the crisis or solving the problem means getting her to counseling services. And again, the Pregnancy Resource Center is going to know about all of these. Sometimes she's in a relationship issue where she's being abused. And so filling the crisis, solving the problem means getting her into a place of safety. Now, sometimes you'll encounter people out on the sidewalk who don't want children, or, hey, number 5 was a surprise and this one didn't make the cut. I remember sidewalk counseling one morning with one of my partners, and she was talking to a woman who was pregnant with her 5th child. And she said to her, God must think you are one amazing mother to give you another child. And this woman was just grinning from ear to ear, and she decided to choose life, And so letting people know that sometimes the surprises in life, that these are amazing things, amazing blessings that we may be rejecting. I was talking to another woman one morning, and she was saying to me, my son Isaiah was a surprise, and now I'm pregnant with this one, and I don't know what to do. And, I actually considered abortion with Isaiah, and then I decided to have him, and he's like the best thing that ever happened to me. And so, I was just coming alongside her, reinforcing that. I said, yeah, can you imagine your life without Isaiah? I mean, and this little one may be another huge blessing in your life. Maybe the terror, doesn't matter, still a blessing, right? So the idea here is that we are reinforcing all the good that we're hearing and filling those needs and letting them know that this isn't the answer, that this is where the problems start, that this is where the pain starts, and that we've got so much help available for them. So, all right, now common mistakes we should avoid. And then the next slide is going to be the 5-point method that I keep bragging about that we're going to get to. Number 1 thing to avoid. Don't talk needlessly amongst yourselves. We have seen people go out to the abortion facility and have a picnic on the sidewalk, okay? We don't want women going into the abortion facility and their last memory is you laughing and gabbing out there. I mean, absolutely. Shake hands out there. You can talk about the weather for a minute, encourage one another, but you want your focus to be a disposition of prayer. From a Christian perspective, you really are going to the foot of the cross. Again, we don't want women not taking this serious because we're not taking it seriously. So we need to be aware of the environment that we're creating out there. That yes, we do want to be hopeful and encouraging and loving, but we also don't want to look like we're having a party in front of the abortion facility. So keep that in mind. Number 2 thing to avoid is don't interrupt another sidewalk counselor. I remember one morning I was sidewalk counseling and there were 4 of us that ended up out there. We accidentally kind of cross-scheduled a couple people, and this woman was dialoguing with another woman, and she was speaking Spanish with her. Well, one of the volunteers, the 4th sidewalk counselor that came out, she wanted a piece of the action. So she started speaking to her, and it even got to the point where the client turned to that other woman and said, I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to this other person. And the other person just really wanted to be a part of this save, right? And so at one point, this woman throws her hands up in the air and she says, I'm done with this. And she goes into the abortion facility. And it's just so sad. I turned to the other sidewalk counselors and I said, gosh, we got to be so careful that we're not ganging up on people. From a Christian perspective, it's like we need to remember that the Holy Spirit has got it. If your partner invites you into a conversation and it's natural and, that woman's already established some rapport, you don't need to worry about this as much, but you don't want 4 of you going towards a woman. You want to separate the prayer group out on the sidewalk and just have 1 or 2 people that are reaching out to the folks out on the sidewalk. All right, number 3 thing to avoid, don't yell out, don't kill your baby. This can be used judiciously at times, but if you yell this out, a woman's thought, a woman who's in self-preservation mode in crisis, she's thinking, you don't know me. You don't know my story. How dare you say that to me? Mom and dad kicked me out of the house. I have nowhere to live. I don't have any food. I mean, really, people are dealing with some pretty serious situations. And so it can just seem callous and uncaring. And so we really want to be careful with our words and instead call out with words of hope and help first. All right, number 4, we shouldn't yell at all, but we should project our voice. So I remember one morning, I was sidewalk counseling and, I called out across this expansive parking lot because that was the only way I could reach the client. And, this woman, she went in and then she came out 15 minutes later and she's walking towards me and she said, I decided to come talk to you because you weren't yelling at me. And I thought that's so weird because I had to project my voice across the parking lot, and so it just goes to show that you can project love, that you can project help, but we want to make sure we're not yelling at people. So there is a difference. All right, number 5, we want to make sure that we don't cover our eyes. Sunglasses, hats, right? We want to make sure that people can see our eyes. We don't want people fishing. Where are you and all of that, The eyes are the window to the soul. And so we need to make sure that we're connecting with people. So keep that in mind. All right, here's the last couple of things. Be careful not to hold or stand next to someone who is holding a graphic image. Now, what I will say is that you should defer to Students for Life of America on this point. If they have a particular policy, you should follow that. Here in Sidewalk Advocates for Life, this is the approach that we take. We truly believe that graphic images can be very effective in certain situations, such as an educational setting where there's a chance for dialogue, where people really have a chance to work that out, right? I had a friend who changed her mind in law school. She went to a Scott Klusendorf talk and he said, America won't fight what it can't see and you have a choice to look at this or not. And so she looked at it and she changed her mind. She told me afterwards, I'm pro-life now. And she went home and showed her boyfriend and he became pro-life, right? So I've seen this be very effective. I don't like them when they're ginormous out on the sidewalk because it says baby, baby, baby. It says I'm a protester. And we want to look as much like a safe person, not an angry person. We want to look like a person and not a protester. We want to be that safe place for women in crisis. We don't want to lose that conversation before it even starts. So, and really try not to hold signs at all. You don't want a barrier to conversation. Have a few pieces of literature in your hand. Have a pregnancy help sign that's propped up on a literature box nearby, or have a friend hold that, right? So again, the more that we can look like people and not protesters, the more that we have a chance of getting that conversation. And again, let us know if you have any questions about that. And then don't do anything to reinforce the fanatical pro-life image in any way, right? I think that's pretty self-explanatory. The vast majority of the pro-life movement is, again, peaceful, prayerful, and law-abiding, but once in a while, you get somebody out there that you wouldn't want speaking for you or for us, right? Don't model any of that behavior. And if someone's being aggressive out on the sidewalk, you can talk to them about the more peaceful approach, or you may have to distinguish yourself. You guys wear the same t-shirt out on the sidewalk, move a little bit further down, cover another entrance, so that, again, you paint yourself as a safe place for women in crisis. Okay, here's what everybody's been waiting for. That's all great foundational material that I think is going to be a huge blessing to you. But now let's talk about outreach to an abortion-minded woman and the family that she comes with or friends that she comes with. So here we go. 5-point method. Number 1, we're going to smile and greet and love. This is just as simple as, hi, my name is Lauren. Want to let you know that we love you. We've been praying for you. We've got real help for you today. Or, hey, I'm Jim. Nice to meet you. I'm with the Peaceful Sidewalk Ministry this morning. Or, hey, I'm Betty and I'm with the, local university student group and want to let you know about all the wonderful resources that we have at our local pregnancy center. So the idea here is make this natural for you. Guys, if it's weird for you to walk up to a woman that you just met and say, hey, I love you, been praying for you, don't do that, okay? Do something that's natural for you and your personality, okay? So number 1, smile and greet and love, right? Number 2, give literature and explain the help, okay? So this is how I do this. I don't say, will you take this? With great confidence, I say, this is for you. And you make a natural motion towards her hand, and her natural inclination is to take that information, right? So again, just a neat little human strategy. And then we can talk about a couple things that are available. So we can say, hey, free pregnancy test, free sonogram right next door. In fact, if you go with our services today, we can save you $155. That's a little tip from our friends in St. Louis, finding out what Planned Parenthood charges for the sonogram and the pregnancy test, and then saying, hey, we can save you that money this morning to date your pregnancy, to talk about your choices, to figure out where you're at, right? So again, smile and greet and love, give literature and explain the help. Now we're to step number 3, which is ask and listen. So we're going to say, do you mind if I ask what brings you here today? Or you can say, do you mind if I ask what brings you here today so I can point you to the best free resource in town? That's a real general good thing to say or ask if you're at a Planned Parenthood facility where people are going in for all sorts of things. And you're just saying, hey, I just want to help. I just want to be helpful, right? And we really want to empathize. Whatever she says, really listening and empathizing with that, right? Number 4, we're going to solve the perceived problems. Let's say she does say, hey, got kicked out of the house. I have nowhere to go. You can say, gosh, I'm so sorry for what you're going through. want to let you know about this wonderful maternity home that we have in town. The Pregnancy Resource Center will help you right next door. We'll get a plan for you. We'll make sure you have everything that you need. We really want to be there for you. There's so much help available, right? So just really letting her know. Now, sometimes they won't tell you, or a woman will start to cry right at that moment, and you can just generally speak to the issue of abortion. I remember one morning I was reaching out to a young woman who was a senior in high school, just felt like this was a terrible time. And I said, a lot of women going in, they think that this might be the answer, but we know that this isn't the answer, that this is where the problem starts, that this is where the pain starts. And I want to save you from that. And there are two heroic decisions that you can make. You can choose to have your baby and parent, right? Or you can choose to place your child in a loving home and give it to a couple that cries every night for a child, and it's a great opportunity for you. You get to make the decision about how that all is set up and how much you see your child and all of that, right? So the idea here is, remember we talked about the mom, baby, God model earlier? That's how we're going to walk through the conversation. So as we're solving the problem, as we're talking to her, see how this all connects, we're going to start with her, right? We love you. We care about you. We've got so much help available at the local pregnancy center. Again, free pregnancy test, free sonogram, anything that you might need. Ask and listen. Do you mind if I ask what brings you here today? That we solve the perceived problem. Oh, you say that you need help with rent and groceries. Well, the great thing is that our pregnancy center next door helps with those things. And I'd love to take you next door and get a plan together that works for you, right? And then here is the last step, number 5. We're never going to end a conversation without empowering her to leave. We're going to give her that invitation to the local pregnancy center. So we're going to say, let me walk you right next door. Or, hey, why don't you jump in the car and you can follow behind me to the Pregnancy Resource Center. Or, say it's across the street. I'll run across the street. I'll guide you into a parking spot and then I'll walk you in. And, Judy, our amazing pregnancy help counselor, she will be there to meet you, right? So you're going to help kind of seal the deal. So again, no conversation is going to be the same, but you've got these 5 guideposts to walk you through the conversation. Okay. Now, quick tips, and we're at the very end of our training here, so we're almost done. If you are approaching a car, again, make sure that you're still on public right-of-way. We want to be law-abiding. You're going to do the roll down your window sign. And the funny thing is nobody has 80s or 90s cars anymore where you actually have to roll down the window, but people get this, right? So you roll down your window, big smile, literature in your hands. Hi, how you doing? Windows aren't soundproof, so you can kind of start talking. The natural inclination is for them to roll down the window, and then you can hand them information and say, hey, I'm Lauren. I'm with the Peaceful Sidewalk Ministry this morning. Want to let you know that we've got real help next door. Here's all the things that we can do for you. Again, you're walking through that 5-point method, right? If someone has to walk down the sidewalk to you, you can calmly start to walk towards them. Again, painting yourself as that peaceful, prayerful, law-abiding, safe presence for a woman in crisis. Now, no matter what, and I know you've heard me say this ad nauseum, but I'm going to say it again. You need to be peaceful, prayerful, and law-abiding. If some of this advice during this training won't allow you to be one of those things, then don't use that advice, because we want to take an approach that's above reproach. That's why we're seeing such miracles, is because women are so happy that we are there. So many of them are so happy that we were there. And we often get to meet the children that they have years later. So now, friends and family, if you have a boyfriend that comes out smoking on the porch or runs to the car to grab a sweater or a pillow or whatever it may be, the 5-point method still works. You can say, hey,